All right, auction tips and techniques. So, especially for beginner, one of the scariest parts of this is going to auction. Scariest and most exciting. Once you get really used to it, you've been to a ton of auctions, it's just another thing. But going to your first auction is going to be intimidating. Especially some of the big cities, Dallas, you guys that have like auctions with 12 lanes, 2,000 cars a week. Here in Tulsa, the most we get at an auction is like 800 cars a week. It's not a big market. That's why I buy all over the country. But, when you're going to your first auction or you're just learning in general, there's a lot to learn, and you can really screw yourself if you don't have a list of rules and things that you follow to make sure that you don't get screwed, pretty much. Remember the first car I bought, I didn't know what I was doing. And I bought a car that had no reverse. It was a Pathfinder. And the funniest part is, as it drove out of the lane, they had written on the rear window, no reverse. But I didn't check the vehicles. I didn't do my homework before. So, I bought a car that I lost $500 on, my first car at the auction. It was depressing. So what you can do is you can have a list of rules and stuff that you don't do or you stick to, and just be strict with yourself. You have to have discipline. And I'll give you an example. Most auctions, I try to get there 2 or 3 hours early. There's one locally that I usually get there around 4 a.m. or so, 4:30, and I look at every single car. I won't buy a car if I haven't personally looked at it and started it and actually, checked it over to see what's going on. Not only that, you need to make a list of all the cars. And, for me, I have a little decoding language that I use. I'll write the run list and have like little notes next to it about, is it 4x4? Does AC work? How many miles? Because as good as you think your memory is, you're gonna screw up. If you're trying to remember all these cars, you're going to get too confused, and one is going to have 300,000 miles and one will have 150, and you'll think the one with 300,000 miles has 150, and now you're screwed yourself. And I had a friend that did that once. He would not make a list. He went to go buy an '06 Honda Civic. Turns out it had 260,000 miles, and he paid $4,000 for it because he thought it had 100,000 miles. Yeah, that was pretty funny, but he didn't listen to me. So that's what I do. I get there and I look at every car that I think will go cheaply. And now the exception would be if the car is going through the lane, it's like 500, it's super cheap. Like say it's like no brainer cheap. And you're willing to take the risk. Like say it's $1,000, and worst case, you'll sell it for $800 and dump it, but you might sell it for $4,000. To me, that's an acceptable risk, to risk losing $200 to make $2,000. And as long as the majority of those turn out good, then that's not a bad risk at all. The second rule is, excuse me, I only buy from new car dealers. I will not buy from another dealership whatsoever. Just will not, absolutely refuse. And new car trade-ins are, the gems, the ones you want to buy, the ones that somebody's been driving that car and they traded it in, they got a new vehicle, so it's been on the road. If you buy from another dealer, chances are you're buying their problem. Why can't they sell it? What makes you think you're so much better that you can sell something they couldn't sell? I like buying bank repos, like local banks, credit unions. Now, a lot of the subprime banks like Credit Acceptance, UACC, Westlake Financial, those cars are just ratted out. Those people they didn't make their payment for a reason, probably because there's a major repair they can't afford. They got taxes, they got approved for another vehicle, whatever it is. Those are going to be cars that you really need to look at closely before you consider buying. But a new car trade from the local Ford dealership is going to be a great option versus buying from your competitor across the street. So that's a big thing. I refuse to buy from I don't even look at those cars. I don't start them. I don't even walk in the lanes of the wholesalers and the used car dealers, because, you know, the wholesaler is going to want too much. They're going to want as much for the car as you can sell it for on the streets, or more in a lot of cases, because they're selling to finance lots and buyer pay here's. And, you know, it's not even worth your time to waste and look at those. So third rule, and crap, I should have wrote these down, shouldn't I? Third rule is price bracket. So I have cars that I don't buy cars that I'm going to be selling for less than $2,000, and I don't buy cars that I'll be selling for more than $5,000. Now I do, but that's, for me now, that's 80 to 90% is $2,000 to $5,000, and 70 to 80% is between $3,000 to $4,000. Dollars, that is. And your range will vary based on where you live in your market. You know, we have a very competitive market where most of the cars under 4,000 are really pieces of junk. So that's what makes it easy for us, is if we can get the cars that are nice, run great, they're easy to sell. You know, they go drive down and look at all these other car dealerships and they show up here, it's easy to sell. So that's my rules. You know, I won't buy a car, because oddly enough, people that buy cars under 2,000 are really picky. And then once you get over 5,000, a lot of people don't have that cash sitting around. So I always stick in my sweet spot. I don't go around chasing, you know, all these seemingly cheap cars that are like 3 years old, you know, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, because you go buy a $15,000 car and make $2,000. Well, you could have spent that $15,000 and bought yourself, you know, 5 or 10 cars and made $800 a piece. You know, that's $4,000 to $8,000 in profit on a whole collection of cars, versus buying one and, you know, and having to sit on it for 2 months. You know, screw that. You don't want to do that. That's how you get in trouble. So those are the 3 big rules. 1, always check every car that you are going to be bidding on. 2, only buy from new car dealers and sometimes bank repos. You know, you can get really good deals for local credit unions. I have a 2012 Mustang out here that I bought cheap. And the third rule is stay within your price range. Like, stick to your bracket. Don't go around chasing gold, you know, little shiny cars they seem to be cheap. And I'll tell you another thing. Cars always look better in the lane when they're running through than they do outside. You know, I've seen cars that I went to go look at that were pieces of shit, and then I'll see them go through the lane. I'm like, man, that's a good looking Trailblazer or vehicle or car. It's usually Trailblazers for some reason. But, you know, you're gonna have like optimism and goggles in the lane that you're not gonna see things that you're gonna see before. And then it's a really bad feeling to buy a car that you didn't look at, go out there, you start it up, and it, you know, has a little bit of a knock on the first second when it starts. You know, it's got a bunch of scratches you didn't see. The tires are bald. And that's why I try to be the first person every morning to start the cars I'm looking at, because I want to know if it has a rattle, a timing chain rattle, you know, if it has a tick that goes away, if it has, you know, a slight knock that you can't hear. Because when you're in the lane and people are talking, yelling, the auctioneers, you got, you know, all these speakers in your ear, you can't hear that slight knock or tick, or, you know, the brakes grinding, all these little things that you won't notice. You need to look before. So that's today's video. 3 tips that are going to save you a ton of money, a ton of headache, and pretty much it's just going to cut out most of the problems that you're probably dealing with in your inventory, because you know, it takes extra time. Sure, you spend a couple hours before every auction that you probably don't normally spend right now, but that saves you all the headache of, after you buy the car, you're going to spend hours of headache fixing it, driving around town, messing with it, all that mental space and all the headache that you're going to have after the fact, you can save before the auction. And it's really actually going to be less of a time investment overall at the end. So that's been today's video. Talk to you guys in the next one.